What's up? It's me, your favorite shitty internet roommate. As every year passes, more and more anime are coming out, and with so many coming out, there's a good chance you might miss out on one that is pretty good. Or in this video's case, you might have an anime that came out and had some buzz, but afterwards no one's really talking about it anymore. To this day, you constantly hear conversations about Cowboy Bebop, but not really as much about Outlaw Star. There's so much discussion about the terrible anime that everyone uses as an analytical punching bag, and there's always constant praise for the nigh perfect 9 and 10 out of 10 anime. But with this video series that I started with Air Gear, I'm focusing on the underrated ones, the 6 out of 10s, the 7 out of 10, or maybe even better, because today I'm talking about Parasyte. Parasyte is a 2014, 24-episode sci-fi horror anime that was adapted from a 1989 seinen manga, and it was written and created by Hitoshi Iwaki. And let's just say, it lets you know real quick that it's a seinen. Not even a minute in, a woman's head is getting eaten. Alright? It's a story about these parasites that they come from Earth and they take over human brains and they eat humans. But our main character, Shinichi here, he was sleeping with his earphones on so the parasite couldn't enter his brain. And after a little fight, it had no choice but to stay in his hand. So unlike other people that were attacked by these parasites, he still has his human brain intact. Like, could you imagine if he wasn't wearing those earphones? That would be like you going on your computer without any protection and then just expecting your computer to be able to fight off the malware parasite, the ad parasite, the cyber attack parasite. I hate to break it to you, but he's not gonna stand a chance. Bro is getting cooked. And that's why your computer needs the power of Nordvpn to be that main protagonist and fight off those parasites and protect you. Nord strives to make the internet a better place, as you will no longer have to deal with hackers or cyber attacks or malware. And you don't even gotta fight a multi-headed scythe monster to protect yourself. All you gotta do is click a single button. If you're ever downloading a file, Nord's Threat Protection Pro will protect you from any malware. And it even blocks annoying ads. It's even got a dark web monitor to protect your details from any hackers. And on top of all that, no matter where you go in this whole wide world, Nord will allow you to say you're somewhere completely different, allowing you to change your location, thus giving you the ability to even watch shows that you couldn't watch in your home region. Take a note from our boy Shinichi, and don't let these parasites take you over and infect you. Instead, put that power into your hand with a single click of protection. Can you tell I feel really proud about that? And you can do that with my risk-free 30-day money-back guarantee link here. Keep yourself secure. Thank you, NordVPN, and back to the video. And pretty standard anime stuff, they build a bond together and they kind of have to work together to fight off other parasites. And it's pretty surprising to me that this anime just kind of came and went and was only popular the year it came out, considering this is a prominent seinen manga from the 80s. This would be like Berserk getting a great adaptation of its entire story. I mean, I only got the idea to talk about it again because the lock-in god from this series became a whole meme, and that's what brought back the relevance, because this dude is locking in and happens to have the headset on. It's kind of perfect. But you never really see discussions of this series from the greater anime community. It's not treated like a classic or anything like that. And you're not really seeing the same analytical lectures being done on it like some other series, despite its many great qualities. The animation, while not being insane and doing something completely crazy, and at points suffering from the late years madhouse, CGI Switch game crowds. But outside of those hiccups, it is mostly consistently great, especially the way they animate the parasite's bodies morphing and transforming. It's genuinely so unnerving to look at, and it's very well done. Another great quality of Parasyte is how it just balances all these different types of genres. For starters, it's a high action thriller with some really great choreography. The first few fights maybe not so much, because it's just kind of parasites kind of just flailing at each other on some wacky waveable inflatable two-man type beat. But especially after Shinichi's transformation after episode 5, the fighting becomes way more dynamic and interesting, and there's so many standout moments that unfortunately I can't show you because there's a lot of blood and bad stuff that would get me in trouble with YouTube. Sorry. The best part of the fights are honestly just seeing Migi be so methodical and just seeing him plan out how he's gonna like strategize through this fight and then seeing it all in action. It gives the fight so much substance and weight. And it's a really short and sweet, well-paced story. No filler at all, and by the 24th episode, it feels complete. It feels wrapped up, and it pretty much follows the manga to a T. But the series is also psychological and will actually have you discussing with your friends about humanity and like what we're doing to the planet and how we're hurting others, and are we really the villain? It does it so well, by the end, you'll be on some I am human, but what does it all mean? But it's also a horror series that has gore and suspense. And not horror like, you know, jump scare type beat, but more a focus on things like emotional horror and body horror, and especially psychological horror. Very The Thing and Invasion of the Body Snatchers type beat. And it's a slice of life rom-com high school drama, which, you know, isn't a genre that really blends in well with those other things I mentioned. But when you start diving into the themes of the series, you'll see how these contrasting genres actually make perfect sense, but we'll get into that later. But I'd say one of the most immediate things you'll notice about this series is that fucking OST. Despite being a manga from the late 80s and early 90s, this adaptation uses a lot of music that was pretty popular around 2014, with mainly a heavy focus on digital soundscapes. Heavy, rumbling, like shaking your rectum, distorted synths, choir chanting vocals on some Nier type shit, drum and bass, electro house, and probably the most, you know, either you hate it or you love it, dubstep, which of course was very popular around this kind of 2012, 2014 time. And look, I'm not the type to make, you know, sweeping judgments on an entire genre, but I'm gonna make a sweeping judgment on an entire genre. You know, dubstep, yeah, it didn't age that well. It's pretty bad. But even if I don't mess with that music on a personal level as like a, you know, as a listening experience, that doesn't mean that I can't think it works and fits in certain aspects. As I think the dubstep and really all the electronic music in this series works so well. For one, it heightens all the action moments to an insane level. Nothing feels as blood pumping and exhilarating as like those moments where Migi's like, Shinichi, there's one of my kind nearby. And then the fucking dubstep intensifies. But it also works really well in adding to the horror atmosphere. There's so many moments where already some creepy shit's going on, and then the background noise of those synths and the distorted sounds just, oh, it feels like the music is crawling in your skin. Like the track Creep, that just adds so much to the psychological horror elements of the series. It sounds devious, it sounds mischievous. It feels like the music was produced from like the deepest parts of the abyss. Menace on the beat. Or tracks like Full Moon that are just intensely creeping up through the entire song. It's like the anthem of anxiety. Imagine getting chased by this fucking dude and this theme is playing in your head. No. But also the OST has a lot of contrasting, soft, beautiful piano music. You got tracks like Bliss, which just have a very warm, human, almost wholesome sound. Just some sweet piano keys, chill little drive-in beat. Sounds like something you'd hear in like a park area in like a Pokemon game. You feel that human element, especially with probably one of the most important tracks on the track list, Next to You. You'll hear it all through the anime, especially during very emotional and human moments. I would call it the heart of the OST, and it's just a beautiful song overall. And this contrast of sounds is very important because it coincides with the themes of this series. Parasyte has themes of humanity versus parasites and kind of the moral dichotomy of those two. So thus you have digital electronic music, which doesn't use real physical instruments. It doesn't have as much of a human element because a human isn't actually playing the instrument, you know what I mean? And there's lots of people, not me, who would describe electronic music as like, you know, that there's no emotion in it, which fits the idea of the parasites. And then of course you have the piano music. Real instrument, emotional sounding, which of course coincides with the human part of the narrative and themes. There's even a track called I Am, which has two distinct versions. One version being very high energy, very digital sounding, obviously Parasyte, but while the second version is a piano ballad, way more emotional and of course very human. Even both of the amazing opening and ending themes reflect these themes too. First off, I just want to take a moment to kind of gush about this opening, Let Me Hear by Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. It's this synth rock, heavy metal meets auto-tune, multi-part like magnum opus of a song. And if you think the opening version is good, you gotta listen to the full version, because it turns from like a synth rock mixed with like heavy metal elements, then goes into like a whole dance section, then goes into just a head-banging metal part, and then ends with like this super vocoder-led euphoric section. Me and my girl have like pretty decently contrasting music tastes, but you know, we appreciate each other's different tastes, and this song in particular means a lot to us because it has so many different parts. We kind of each have our own little like favorite part of the song. My girl loves the head-banging screamo section. She goes crazy when she hears that, and I am just a sucker for vocoder shit. When I hear the song is like part of our relationship soundtrack. And as an opening, it fits the show perfectly. Again, it's a very digital sounding song, and the actual human vocals are even covered in auto-tune, which kind of works with the narratives of like a parasite taking over human emotion and human element. And then towards the end, when like the singy vocals are kind of going back and forth with the screamy parts, it's like a parasite and a human, and you get it. And in complete contrast, again, going back to those themes of human, parasite, the ending theme is the most emotional piano ballad ever. Just this soft, delicate song about moving forward and human emotions. The literal opening and ending are the dichotomy of human versus parasite. And speaking of that moral dichotomy, it actually takes me to what is probably the most important part of this series. The connection of these two, because of their connection, causes them to go on almost these parallel arcs that both beautifully end in a very similar place. Shinichi starts as a pretty dorky, very heartfelt kind of guy, and due to his big heart, he's a very altruistic person. Even before he gets his, Captain America super serum powers and goes on a looks-maxing journey, you will see multiple moments of him putting himself in danger in order to help someone else. And Migi is in stark contrast to that. Migi don't give a fuck, and he enforces Shinichi's empathy by having none. Migi, like a lot of his kind, is very cold, very logical, and very rational. He doesn't have any empathy or emotions to any of the themes this series promotes. Understanding others, empathy, and of course, altruism. Migi doesn't get it. Why would he do something for someone else at the cost to himself? He is very self-interested. But that is what makes their cold and rational and warm and caring dynamic such a great arc. We see Shinichi slowly becoming like Migi, more rational, losing his emotions, and we see Migi slowly start to understand human emotions. Okay, so basically through these 24 episodes, we see Shinichi go through the Spider-Man gaining aura arc. It has all the classic tropes. A nerdy glasses guy with a good heart stands up for others even if he gets beat up, as he literally stands up for his schoolmate and then, gets beat up by these dudes. And for some reason, one of them just casually knows kung fu and shit. The point is, before he even gets his powers, he understands with great power comes great responsibility. And I think this comes from a very impactful moment in Shinichi's childhood. When he was young, he was trying to get something and losing balance, and he fell and almost had a bunch of boiling oil fall on him. But his mom saved him without even a second thought. And in that process of saving him, she actually burned herself. She didn't even like react to it, because only thing she was thinking about is her son okay? And she only realized afterwards that she was in pain. This moment is something Shinichi feels very guilty about. It's something he thinks about a lot, but I also think it's what made him such a altruistic person. Both learning from that example, seeing his mother do something so altruistic made him probably want to be like that, but also because if he does the saving, then he never has to worry about someone else getting hurt trying to save him like his mom did. You have the moments where they're like kind of learning and starting to understand how, they work and their powers work. There's that point where Migi is trying to understand the male, body function, and he kind of grabs Shinichi's, oh wait, that's not in Spider-Man. Then of course, after episode 5, Migi's cells begin to intermingle with Shinichi, as Migi connected himself and kind of became part of his heart. And it starts to kind of change him even more physically and emotionally. For one, he has the classic Spider-Man, I don't need my glasses anymore moment, and he basically gains like the Captain America super serum powers. He's stronger, he can run really fast, he can jump very high distances, he can even dodge super fast attacks because he sees them all slow-like, which is also kind of a Spider-Man moment. And then you start to really see the change after he comes back from his looks-maxing journey. He mewed, he guashed, he even got his like Spider-Man, getting his lick back on the bullies moment. Those moments are always great. I think everybody loves those moments. And bro was violating that casually kung fu knowing bully. The way he was just like nonchalantly just casually bobbing and weaving this dude, and then when he catches his foot, fucking throws him off with his shoe down, and he puts the shoe down and just looks the disrespect was crazy. He's Shang Tsung all that dude's aura, but at the same time, he also starts to have his Spider-Man 3 like symbiote taking over him arc. Because Migi connecting to his heart made him more like Migi, as in his emotions and empathy, again, the big thing that's supposed to separate humans and parasites, they are now far more suppressed. So while yes, he does get a cool new haircut and has the ability to remain calm in crazy situations, and has powers like being able to recognize who the alpha group leader is and absolutely mog them because he's a Sigma. I gotta stop. Welcome to internet brain rot. But while he has all that, he has lost his ability to cry. He can't even grieve the loss of his mother. Even his dad, who is taking the loss of his wife very hard, asks Shinichi, when did you get so strong? It's like you're made of iron. After Kana dies, Shinichi feels responsible and he wants to mourn her death, but he can't. And even though he'll have these moments where he feels things again, it literally physically hurts him, and he gets over it very quickly. By merging with Migi, the thing that made him human, his ability to feel, has gone, and no longer can he be part of boys who cry. And one of probably the most key moments of like showing how much he's changed is when Shinichi finds a dog that is very close to passing on the street. And he brings him to a park, a more quiet place, because while Shinichi is losing his emotions, they're still kind of there. It's a gradual change. But after the dog passes, Shinichi throws it away in the trash. What? And he rightfully gets called out by his love interest and best girl, Murano. Write all the comments you want, you're wrong. You see, Murano plays a huge part in Shinichi's arc. She's sort of his rock, his constant reminder of who he is and thus his humanity. She liked Shinichi before all the powers and all these changes started happening. Him being a very dorky, nervous guy, she liked that about him, made her feel safe. And she loved that he was so altruistic, that he would always go so hard to help someone else, even if he was weaker. Basically the, I love Spider-Man, but I love Peter Parker more type beat. And throughout the entire show, she's constantly asking this question to him of, you are Shinichi Izumi, right? Because she knows him very well and can tell he's changing. And it's here that she sees he has really changed. As the Shinichi she knew, would never throw a dog in the trash. And the fact that he was like, poor puppy, he's dead. It's not a puppy. Oh. A dead dog isn't a dog anymore. It's a dog-shaped lump of meat. Minus all the aura. There is no aura. Get rid of all the aura. You see, towards the beginning of the show, there was a scene at this exact same park where some boys at a sandbox were kind of messing with a cat, bearing it down and throwing rocks at it. First off, what the fuck? That's where we needed to hear Migi handle the defense. And during that time, Shinichi defended the cat and saved it and told those boys, animals are not toys. They're just like you. And Murano saw this, and you can tell she really likes Izumi for doing this kind of stuff. It's clear that here at this time, Shinichi had a respect for life outside of just humans, which is in stark contrast to this. Like, sure, he buries the dog after, but he needed to be told off to do that. And I love how real and gradual this change of Izumi feels. Because it's not just him changing because, you know, Migi's cells merging with his heart. It's also because of him consistently dealing with progressively more trauma that he's sort of becoming numb to it. Like early on, he was like really scared of bugs, right? But then once you see a fucking weird ass monster thing come out of your hand, it's kind of hard to be scared of bugs anymore. That changed. He wasn't scared of bugs after that. Another kind of layer kind of showing this gradual change is seeing how Shinichi answers Murano each time that she asks him the question. At the very beginning, he's very much sure of himself and he says, yeah, yes I am. Nothing but complete honesty in his voice. Then after his transformation, when she asks him again, he answers first by saying he's not sure, but then plays it off kind of like a joke. It's like, oh, of course I am. But you can kind of tell he's starting to slip a little. Eventually, it gets to a point where he is so angry and full of rage, and he's acting not like himself, the way he's talking and everything. And Murano tries to tell him this, and she asks him the question again, and he yells at her and tells her to shut up. This is basically the Spider-Man 3, like in the bar moment. It's clear that all of these things are still affecting him, but because he can't express the full range of human emotions, the only thing he can do is keep bottling. And when you do that for so long, the only emotion left to come out is rage. It's okay, bud. And the other important question she asked that will come up later is when he's leaving town to go, you know, find his dad and everything, and she asks him, will you come back? But all of this wraps up so beautifully with the climax of this arc, which is probably the most memorable scene of this entire series. So outside of Migi and Shinichi, the other probably most interesting character is Reiko. She's a parasite that also kind of goes on a similar arc as Migi. We'll kind of talk more about her towards the end of the video. She was a parasite who started the series much like any other parasite, not understanding human emotions or feeling them. But after having a human baby, she slowly starts to grow an interest in understanding humans and their emotions. And eventually, she learns to feel maternal love for her human baby. Much like Migi, she didn't understand the idea of altruism, but when she dies sacrificing herself for her human baby. She walks up to Shinichi, turning her face into his mom's to appeal to his emotions, and she dies protecting her baby. The baby cries, and Shinichi asks, "Are you sad?" And he says, "You know, of course you are. Your mom is dead." And then suddenly, all these emotions start hitting him. He thinks of his mother and her selfless acts to protect him. Then, that question Murano asked starts to ring in his head. You'll come back, right? Now that question that was mostly a question of like, will you come back from this trip that you're gonna go on, is now recontextualized as her asking him if the real Izumi, his emotions, will come back. And he finally recalls and processes all that trauma that's been built up, and he finally cries. And during the whole scene, they're playing the ending theme, which the ending theme is, it's the right time, because it's the right time for him to cry and gain back his emotion. Oh my, it's so good! And just the whole context of it. The fact that the person who was able to help Shinichi regain his humanity and regain his emotions was a parasite who themselves didn't understand that at one point and had to learn that it's... He went from being a very emotionally charged human being, then he started losing those emotions and empathy and began to be more rational and cold. And now, after processing all of it, he has found his emotions. He has found his empathy again. And by the end, he's mastered both worlds. He is now in the middle of rational and emotional. Meanwhile, Migi started very cold and rational. Zero empathy, zero understanding of human emotions. Even saying that things like altruism and sympathy and empathy are things that his kind will never understand. But Migi also starts to change, mainly after episode 5. Shinichi's mom becomes a parasite and then she like literally pretty much kills him. It's really sad. But there's even moments before that where you can tell Migi at the very least has an interest in like human psychology. I mean, throughout the whole series he's doing research and is always curious about humans, especially Shinichi, because he is so caring, so emotional, and so self-sacrificing. In an earlier episode, Migi is actually offered by another parasite to come connect to them so they can have two basically parasites in one body. In every way, Migi would have been stronger if he did that. So by his own logic, it would make the most sense that he should do that. But he doesn't. He ends up eliminating that guy. Now granted, when Shinichi asked him, like, were you saving me there? He basically says like, I only did that because I wasn't 100% sure I could do that. You know, it's not like I like you or anything, Bach. But to me, this feels like the first time that Migi kind of starts to change. But of course, the main change is when he merges his cells with Shinichi's heart. While yes, this suppressed Shinichi's emotions, but because they're intermingling, I feel that Shinichi's emotions and big heart also affected Migi. He goes from never wanting to work with humans and being very self-interested to eventually working with Shinichi and actually going with his idea of not killing that detective that Migi wanted to kill at first. There's even a moment where he asks for Shinichi's trust, and you really start to see their dynamic and friendship grow. They even start to kind of joke around and have, banta. There's a point where Migi is trying to cheer Shinichi up, and when Shinichi asks, "Are you trying to cheer me up?" he doubles down. He says, "Yeah, and I'll do it again if I have to later." By connecting those cells, Shinichi becomes more rational. Migi starts to understand human emotions, which allows them to understand each other by literally starting to become each other. One of the most heartfelt moments of seeing that change in Migi is when that detective is like scolding Shinichi to become a lab rat, turn himself in and whatnot, basically being very cold and not empathetic at all. And it's Migi who has to tell this human, "Where's your pity?" And he starts to explain all these things that this high school teen is going through. Migi, a parasite, is the one telling a human to be more empathetic. It's clear that Migi has now learned to understand empathy for Shinichi. And of course, the climax of this is during the fight with Gato. After Migi and Shinichi split, Migi tells Shinichi to go, escape, leave it to him. In a sense, Migi sacrificed himself to give Shinichi the ability to escape. Altruism. He says he's thankful that he didn't take over Shinichi's brain because that's what allowed them to make memories and be friends. And then after that, we see Migi even be empathetic to his own kind. Again, at the beginning of the arc, Migi is very self-interested, even saying at the beginning that killing his own kind has no psychological effect on him. And then at the very end, he chooses not to finish off Gato because he's his own kind. And he feels in the human perspective that would be murder. Both showing a growth of his empathy and his understanding of the human perspective. It's all a beautiful part of this series that emphasizes the themes of what it means to be human. And kind of just on a little bit of a personal note, I just love how this series wholeheartedly champions emotions and empathy and feelings as core parts of the human experience. The fact that the climax of a character's arc is that he can finally cry, like that's very powerful to me. All right, so look, I've always felt that I'm a pretty emotionally tuned dude. I feel things hard, I empathize hard. I don't know why. Maybe I listen to too much Frank Ocean or Jill Scott. Or maybe it's because I'm an Aquarius or Pisces. I don't know which one. Shout out my water signs though. But throughout my life, I kept feeling like, these emotions, they're weakness, or they don't make you man enough, Especially early on in my life, I had the classic immigrant dad, men don't cry type beat. And that's no blame to my pops, he's just dealing the hand that he was dealt, But because I had this constant idea in my head that emotions are bad, it made me at points in my life, hide the emotions, don't be as empathetic, be more quote-unquote manly. Whenever I look back at those moments, I realize whenever I was trying to put away emotion and just be more rational, I was being much worse of a person. Because emotions are what makes us human. It helps us empathize with our fellow humans and bond. Even pretty recently, I was going through a pretty hard time, kind of depressed, dealing with all, the shit I gotta deal with. My mind was so full of I have to do this and I have to do that and I have to make sure I pay this and I have to make sure I do this so I can pay this, that it drained me and kind of put me in a little bit of a survival mode. And when I was in that survival mode, I didn't really have any more energy to have emotion. And thus, the only thing I was left being was completely rational and logical and, it wasn't good for me. I was being less empathetic. I was being less caring. Because I was so busy trying to survive, I didn't have any room left to feel. But that's what's so great about these arcs. It's not telling you that you have to be only emotional or you have to only be rational. It's not saying one or the other is what makes you human. A complete human being needs rationality just as much as they need emotion. You need a balance of the two. That's why you have characters like Kana as examples of a character that's too far on the emotional side of the spectrum. The reason she meets her demise is because she doesn't have any rationality to balance out her emotion, thus showing you the bad side of being too much of one thing. But then you also have characters like Gato, who is so rational that he's fucking scary. He is just a pure horror nightmare fuel villain. This scene of him chasing, I don't know why that shit and then the music, him being so rational and calm, it makes him so intimidating. The intimidation factor on this villain is so well done. Bro, he was playing piano almost butt-ass naked. That's so intimidating. Point is, a human needs balance. No one's better than you because they're more logical or more rational. And being only emotional and completely emotional isn't that great either. There were points in my life where I was too emotional, too forgiving, and maybe too empathetic to people I shouldn't have been, and it led me to my kindness being taken for weakness in a sense. And you end up staying and being in situations for much longer than you needed to be. You need a balance of both. But you're not a bitch for having emotions. It's what makes us human. Now, obviously, while Parasyte is great, I do think it has its problems, not best girl Kana. I already know how Kana fans are watching this right now. As a plot device, as a theming device, she's great. Again, to show you the bad side of being too far on the emotional scale. But outside of that, she's not really a character. I don't really know her that well. I don't think the series does a good job at really showing why it is she, is so obsessed with Shinichi. I know this dude's got aura, but look at the way she's envisioning him. This is infinity aura. And honestly, I think the only reason people think Kana is best girl is because most of these people that were watching the show at that time were teenagers, and for them, they were just like, what? A girl who is madly obsessed with me and cares about nothing if I do wrong or good, as long as I can keep doing whatever the fuck I want and she'll always be obsessed with me? Of course she's best girl. And then they would hate on Murano because, oh no, a woman is asking me to be credible to who I am. Oh no, she wants to make sure that I'm being at my best and expecting more of me. Oh no! I couldn't believe the discussions that were going on about this series especially when it came to Murano. Like people were being way too harsh. People don't like her because she expects more out of our main protagonist. But they didn't realize that that's a good thing. She literally was able to help bring his humanity back because she understood who he really is. She was actively helping him be a better man. Though I will say, I do wish I was able to learn more about Murano. She of course works narratively, and I do know more about her than Kana, because I actually understand why she likes Shinichi. It's explained, it's shown. But outside of that, I don't really know much about her. I would have liked at least something about her personal life so I could maybe even understand why it is specifically she likes those qualities from Shinichi. And in general, some people might not really like the romance love triangle part of this series. Some people who came here for the genres of horror and psychological stuff and sci-fi, they might not like that in combination with the romance slice of life elements. But me personally, for this series, I think you need both, because the dichotomy of those genres coincides with, yes, again, the moral dichotomy themes of the series. Much like how there's a contrast between emotions and rationality, there's also a contrast in the genres of psychological, body horror thriller and rom-com slice of life. But at the end, you find out you need both, just like you need both of these genres to have this series. That's why a lot of the rom-com elements start to fade away in the background when Shinichi is being too rational, because he doesn't have the emotion to, you get it. Because this story is about the importance of needing a balance of rationality and emotion, it makes perfect sense to also have these two contrasting genres. You need the moments of friendship love, relationship love, maternal love to balance out the body horror and psychological horror parts. And as kind of a final criticism I've seen floating around, if you are someone who, you need your series to be subtle in its themes, Parasyte might not be your go-to then. Parasyte definitely isn't the most subtle in telling its themes. It's very on the nose at times. Some people would call it preachy, not me. And while I'll agree, yeah, it's not the most subtle show, I still think that everything really wraps up nicely and feels genuinely amazing when it does end, especially with how it handles the most impactful theme of this whole series. I think Parasyte wants us to question what it really means to be human. And they do that with the parasites really just being a mirror held up to humanity. Parasites are a life form, just like us. They are driven by instinct to want to survive, just like us. We are constantly shown examples of humans doing not so great things. They kill us, just like us. There's a reason that when Migi is researching demons, he says the closest thing to them is humans. And he has a point, especially when you're talking about those damn kids that were messing with that cat. Even the big thing that was separating us from the parasites are human emotions like empathy. We see throughout the series the parasites eventually learn to have it. Migi and Reiko are prime examples of that. Reiko was constantly curious about us, going to lectures to understand human emotion more, and by the end wanting to blend into society and not eat humans anymore. She even starts to feel envious of Murano's ability to be worried about someone. And then of course, at the end, learning to have maternal love. On a small scale, the parasites were our enemies. But by the end, when you're looking at the bigger picture, they are our kindred. It's no surprise that the show starts with, a parasite, doing what you saw. But it ends with the final villain being a human. And who does the final save of that last episode? A parasite. And even on like a meta level, by having a storyline where Shinichi is connected by DNA to Migi and thus helping him understand the Parasyte's perspective, and by the end, after everything we've seen, we understand the Parasyte's perspective, almost as if the show itself is a parasite getting you to understand their perspective. Like, by the end of the series, you'll be much more aware of what humans do, and you might even be like, damn, we kinda suck. But I don't think Hitoshi's intention was to just be like, hey, we're bad, actually. I think Parasyte's story is far more gray than that. Even though the show tells us it's bad what humans do to the environment, it's also literally the reason Shinichi is able to end the final bad guy. He won this because of humanity. When he says, I have no chance at all, but if I don't try, I definitely don't have a chance. That is the power of the human will, but also the reason that Gato is defeated is because of litter. Again, humanity. The mayor isn't supposed to be looked at as like the good guy when he's preaching about like, oh, you know, all humans should be despawned and whatnot. This dude is just an eco-terrorist. Because when you take into context what this series is telling us, it'll tell you that this dude is contradicting himself. He might be fighting for the sake of nature and Earth, and that's his reasoning for wanting humans despawned. But if we look at this story, or even what the author says here in the manga, go ahead and read it if you want to. Humans are part of nature. Even if we become arrogant and pollute and destroy the world, that is still part of nature. All we can do as humans is protect nature as we would protect ourselves. Destroying and hurting nature is really destroying and hurting ourselves. And if we can come to understand that, then maybe we can treat the world better too. Because loving ourselves is loving nature. You can't want to protect nature but hate humans. I think we should all be thinking about the future of mankind, but one human hoping for the happiness of all accomplishes nothing. The best we can do is look after our families, neighbors, and any people or living things we come in contact with. I think that's enough. Humanity will not be saved by statistics, but by the warmth of individuals. To protect this grand whole world, it starts internally, and then it goes personally to the people near you. During that scene when Gato has like 50% chance of actually coming back to life, Shinichi at first thinks about letting nature just decide what happens or not. Instead of his, human morals and the concepts and stuff like that. Just let nature take its course. But he changes his mind and ends up finishing it because he's human. Humans have evolved on this planet just like any other creature, and thus they have the right to fight for their survival just like any other creature does. And that doesn't make us evil. Granted, we shouldn't mindlessly waste Earth's resources and whatnot. And specifically when Shinichi does this, it's not for the grand, planet of Earth, humanity. No, again, it's personal, it's closer, it's for his loved ones. Wanting to survive for your own benefit is a part of being human, but feeling human is to have compassion and empathy for others. That's why even though on a biological, technical level, Lock-in God is more human than Shinichi, but the truth is, he isn't human at all. Or as best girl Murano puts it, Izumi is human because humans find that all life is precious. We may at times take advantage of each other, literally despawn each other. It is human arrogance to think that we understand, how other life forms feel. And for all we know, there are no other life forms who are truly friends to us. But still, even if we can't comprehend them, they are without a doubt neighbors deserving our respect. And going back to this quote from Hitoshi, even the way the story ends is very small scale. It's very personal. It concludes not because Izumi, goes around the world scouring the different regions and defeating all the parasites and saving humanity. No, it ends with him finding out the importance of his connections and loved ones. The story starts with quotes about the Earth on this grand scale, but the quotes at the end of the story are small scale, telling us to hold on to our connections and loved ones tightly. So maybe next time I'm stressing and questioning my place in this grand scale universe and all the problems I have to remember to appreciate those personal connections I've made in life with the ones I love. Because life is short and you really don't know how much time you have to hold on to them. So hold tightly. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you so much for deciding to light your bonfire here on this little corner of the internet. Please let me know in the comments your memories with Parasyte whenever you watched it, if you liked it or not. And feel free to drop more anime that you think are underrated and deserve more of a spotlight. If this video does as well as the Air Gear one, I would love that. I could keep talking more about underrated series. And of course, if you like what I do, you can always give me a like and a subscribe. I'll always appreciate that. Or if you want to support me in the best way you can and keep my lights on, you can do that on my Patreon. There's probably a link up there and maybe one in the description if you can't see that top one. You can do it as little as 3 beans if you just want to give me some general support, or if you're a, absolutely insane person like all these people, you can join my highest tier where you get a whole bunch of stuff, but including a pixel art character that will show up hanging out with me here at the end of all videos. But with all that being said, thank you so much for coming to this little pit stop on the corner of the internet. Peace.